Okay, so this first problem is going to be long division, polynomial long division, where we have no remainder. There are two things that you have to check before you start doing long division or synthetic division. First, you need to make sure that your dividend and your divisor, that both of them are listed in order with highest degree to lowest degree, and degree is your exponents. This first problem here, the dividend, I see that my highest degree is 3, so I'm going to list that out first. That's a cubic term. Next, I'm going to look for a quadratic term, so that's with the power of 2. I do have one of them. It's here, negative 19 x squared, so I'm going to list that one second. Now I'm going to look for a linear term. A linear term is when x is raised to the first power, so that's this positive 87x. And then after that, I'm going to look for a constant. And here my constant is 30. Okay, that's going to be divided by, my divisor is already in appropriate order. So it's got the descending degrees. I've got my variable first, then my constant. Now we're ready to go ahead and divide. So I'm going to draw that long division box. I'm going to put that dividend under the box. So I've got x cubed minus 19x squared plus 87x plus 30. This dividend is going to be divided by the divisor, x minus 10. I am going to go ahead and take the scratch work method so that way you can see the math to justify where each part of the quotient is coming from. So to find the first term of our quotient, we take the first term of our dividend, so that is 1x cubed, and we divide it by the first term of our divisor, so that's just x. If you can simplify these fractions in your head, that's great. I am going to expand just to emphasize on our properties of exponents. So x cubed is x times x times x. That's divided by x. I'm going to have an x from the numerator simplify with an x from the denominator. So this is going to leave me with x squared. This x squared is going to be the first term in my quotient. Again, the quotient, that's the answer to our division problem. Once you know what your first term is for your quotient, you're going to distribute or multiply that first term by each term in the divisor. So x squared times x, that's going to be x cubed. And then x squared times negative 10, that's going to be negative 10x squared. I do have to subtract that result from the previous line, so I'm going to place this in parentheses. I'm going to put a minus sign out front, and just because it's easier for our brains to process, I'm going to go ahead and distribute this negative or this minus sign into the set of parentheses. So when I take this and distribute it, that's going to flip the signs of everything in that group. And then I can treat this as an addition problem because I've distributed that negative. So now I'm just going to simply combine my like terms. I have x cubed plus negative x cubed, that's 0. Negative 19x squared plus 10x squared, that is negative 9x squared. And then I still have these other terms. Positive 87x, bringing that down, and positive 30. Now I'm going to use my highlighter just to make the connection with that first term and the distribution that occurred. Whenever I distributed that x squared across my divisor, it produced those two values for me. Now I'm going to repeat that process, but this time using this line of work, this remaining portion of my dividend. I'm going to take this negative 9x squared and I'm going to divide it by the first term of my divisor. So negative 9x squared, that's the same thing as negative 9 times x times x. I'm expanding just to really emphasize on the properties of exponents. That way we can see that there is an x in the numerator that's going to simplify with an x in the denominator. So I'm going to have negative 9x as my result here, and this is the second term of my quotient. So up here, I'm going to write that second term of my quotient, so that's negative 9x. Now I need to distribute this second term of my quotient across the divisor. So negative 9x times x is negative 9x squared. Negative 9x times negative 10 is positive 90x. I was going to highlight, but I'm going to pause. I'm not going to highlight yet. I need to subtract these two terms from the previous line of work. I am going to place them inside of parentheses and put that subtraction sign out front to emphasize on the fact I need to subtract them. I do like to distribute that subtraction sign as negative into the quantity. So this negative times negative gives me that positive, and then that negative times positive becomes negative, and then I can just add these like terms. So negative 9x squared plus 9x squared is 0. 87x plus negative 90x is negative 3x. And then I need to bring down this plus 30. Now I am going to highlight to make that connection. You know, when we distributed that second term of our quotient across the divisor, it produced these two terms here. And the blue is dark, so I'm trying to highlight underneath so that way we can still read it. But now we need to repeat the process to find the third term of our quotient. So I've got this negative 3x. I'm going to divide that by the first term of my divisor. These x's are going to simplify. You know, anything divided by itself is 1, so that's going to leave us with this negative 3 times 1, which is just negative 3. I'm not going to write the times 1. So this is the third term of our quotient. I'm going to highlight up here to emphasize on where it goes. I'm going to write it down. And now I'm going to distribute that negative 3 across the divisor, just like we did before with the other parts of the quotient. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 10 is positive 30. I need to subtract these terms from the previous result. I do like to distribute that negative. Some people don't. I mean, it's really a personal choice. But so I like to distribute this negative. And so that causes my signs to flip inside of the group, and then we can treat this as an addition problem. So negative 3x plus 3x is 0. 30 plus negative 30 is 0. So we have no remainder. So our quotient is just this portion up here. If we had a remainder, then we would put plus our remainder divided by the divisor. But anyhow, I am going to go ahead and just write down that our answer, it is x squared minus 9x minus 3. And I was going to do synthetic division actually immediately after this, but I've decided I'm going to stick with long division, go ahead and work a problem where we'll have a remainder, and then I'm going to switch over to synthetic division. So let's work another example. So this problem we have open parentheses, negative 15p squared plus 43p plus 37 plus p cubed, close parentheses. All of this is being divided by negative 5 plus p. So before we even start to divide, we've got to check for two things. First, you want to make sure that your dividend and your divisor, that they are both listed in appropriate order. So that's with your degrees descending, so going from greatest degree to least. And then you want to make sure that you're not missing any terms between your highest degree of your dividend and the constant. Just looking at both of these parts of our division problem, I see that they're both scrambled and out of order. My dividend has a degree of 3. That's that highest exponent value. So I'm going to write down p3, or not p3, goodness, p cubed first. And then I'm going to look for a quadratic term. The quadratic term is raised to the power of 2, so we have negative 15p squared. Then I'm going to look for a linear term. That is that positive 43p to the first power. And next, our constant. That's going to be just 37. And it is positive. I'm going to wrap those inside of parentheses. And then that is going to be divided by. And my divisor, it's also out of order. So I'm going to write the p first. So p. And then I could say plus negative 5 or just minus 5. I'm just going to write minus 5. I'm not missing any terms. I see that my degrees, I've got 3, 2, 1, and there is no degree here. It's 0. Technically, it's p to the 0th power. So I'm ready to go ahead and divide. Let's set up that long division bracket. I'm going to write my dividend underneath. So p cubed minus 15p squared plus 43p to the first plus 37. And all of this is being divided by p minus 5. And again, just for the simplicity, I know like some people are really good about doing it in their head and the long division to find their quotient. And that's actually how I was taught. I know a lot of people need to see where the values are coming from, so I am going to do the scratch work method. So we're going to take our first term of our dividend, p cubed, and we're going to divide that by the first term of our divisor. So it's p to the first power. I personally like to expand. So I'm going to take this p cubed and expand it as p times p times p. All of that's divided by p. I'm going to have 1p from the numerator and denominator simplify. So that's going to leave me with p times p, which is just p squared. And this is going to be, that p squared, that is our first term in our quotient. So I'm going to write that down up here. Now we're ready to distribute that first term across the divisor. So p squared times p is p cubed. P squared times negative 5, that is negative 5p squared. I need to subtract that result from the previous line. So I've put parentheses around those two terms and a subtraction sign out front. I am going to distribute this negative into the parentheses. So that flips these signs, but this also changes to an addition problem then. So I'm going to add the opposite. So p cubed plus negative p cubed is 0. Negative 15p squared plus 5p squared, it's going to be negative 10p squared. And I'm actually going to pause for a second. I want to show you, because earlier I had some students, they were kind of having a hard time with this change sign. I guess they thought I was kind of doing some magic math. And I want to show you what's happening here. So I'm going to write out my dividend. It is, what, p cubed minus 15p squared plus 43p to the first power plus 37. All of that minus p cubed minus 5p squared. So I just wrote down everything that was in black before I went and distributed that negative. You guys are used to seeing problems like this whenever we just did basic polynomial operations. And if you were to solve this problem, you know, there's nothing out front of the dividend here that needs to be distributed, so we would just drop our parentheses. But this negative here, we would distribute that in. So we end up with minus p cubed plus 5p squared. And remember, the curriculum, they really emphasize on, instead of having that minus, they're like, hey, write that as addition of a negative. Well, that's, you know, this result here, that's exactly what we have, except we're working like vertically instead of horizontally. If you would rather work horizontally, you can. It's just your work's probably going to get messier. You would need to like go off to the side, and I'm not going to do that, but I just wanted to let you see that. All right, anyhow, I do need to bring down these other two terms to continue this long division problem, so let's do that. So 43p to the first plus 37. And now I need to go ahead and work on finding that second term of the quotient. To do that, I'm going to take negative 10p squared and divide that by p to the first power. So that's the same thing as negative 10 times p divided by p. I'm going to have some simplification happen. So I'm left with negative 10p. Now this work here, that's one way we can prove what that second term of our quotient is. I'm going to take that second term of our quotient and place it up here. And now I am going to distribute that negative 10p across the divisor. I'm going to pause because I didn't realize I did not highlight the terms that came about after I had distributed my first term of the quotient. So I'm going to do that real quick. You know, p squared times p, that gave me that p cubed. P squared times negative 5, that's what gave me this negative 5p squared. Now, negative 10p times p is negative 10p squared. Negative 10p times negative 5 is positive 50p. I need to subtract that result from the previous line, so I'm going to hug it with parentheses, put a subtraction sign out front, and I am going to distribute. So I'm going to change this from subtraction to addition of the opposite, or negative, so I'm flipping these signs. So negative 10p squared plus 10p squared is 0. 43p plus negative 50p is negative 7p. Both of these they're all to the first power. I'm going to bring down that 37, and then I'm going to repeat the process to find that third term, the third term of the quotient. I'm going to highlight this right here to emphasize where this came from. So negative 7p divided by p, this is going to give us our third term of our quotient. It's going to end up being just negative 7. I'll place that up here. And then we're going to repeat that process. We're going to multiply negative 7 times p and negative 7 times negative 5. Okay, now I need to subtract that result from the previous line. just like before, I'm going to distribute this sign. So I'm changing from subtraction to addition and flipping the signs of everything within that following quantity. And I'm just going to add them together. Negative 7p plus 7p is 0. 37 plus negative 35 is 2. And this is our remainder. So I need to write my answer and take this portion of my quotient up here that's been highlighted. I have p squared minus 10p minus 7, but I also need to remember that I have that remainder. So I'm going to put plus my remainder, just 2 in this case, divided by my divisor. So p minus 5. So I'm going to work these two problems again, but with synthetic division. I do think that these are a little bit more labor intensive. Most people do prefer synthetic division, but I do have to test you guys on both. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the problem where we didn't have a remainder. So I'll do that one first. And then after that, I'll do the one where we do have a remainder. Now the answers will be the same. It's just a different method of division. So that problem, the first one we did, it's open parentheses, 30 plus x cubed plus 87x minus 19x squared. All of that was inside of parentheses. And then that is divided by x minus 10. The same rules apply as always. You've got to have the descending order of degrees, and you have to have zeros in place of any missing terms as placeholders. So this one's out of order. We're going to put it in order. There's that cubic term, so 1x cubed. We have that quadratic term, negative 19x squared. We have a linear term, so positive 87x, and then we have a constant, 30. All of that's divided by x minus 10, and that divisor is already in order, so I didn't need to change it. Synthetic division, we're going to take the long division like boxes, or whatever you want to call it, bracket. So our long division setup, it's like that, but I'm going to flip it. So I'm going to flip it upside down. I do like to make sure I have 2 rows to work with, so I'm going to make sure I have 2 rows. And then we're just going to write down the coefficients of each of our terms as they appear. Even if you were to have to use 0 as a placeholder, you would write down 0 to work with that. So we have 1x cubed, so I'm going to write down 1. We have negative 19x squared, so I'm going to write down negative 19. We have 87x, I'm going to write down 87. We have 30. And that's it. We need to figure out what x is equal to, so that way we can have that value that we're going to multiply each of our results, our sums by. So to do that, you take your divisor and you set it equal to 0. And then you solve for x. So we're going to have x minus 10 equals 0. To get x by itself, or to isolate x, we would need to add 10 to both sides of the equation. And we find that x is equal to 10. So we're going to take this value of x, and we're going to place it over here to the left of our vertical portion of that bracket. And now we're going to go ahead and do the algorithm. You have to drop down your first term. Just go ahead and bring it straight down. And then we're going to multiply. So 10 times 1 equals 10. So I'm going to put that product right here. Next, I need to add negative 19 and 10. So negative 19 plus 10 is negative 9. And now I need to repeat that process of taking 10, and I'm going to multiply it by the sum here, -9. So 10 times -9 is -90. So I'm putting that product over here. Next, I'm going to add these together. 87 plus -90 is -3. And I need to repeat that process. I'm going to take 10, I'm going to multiply it by -3. So 10 times -3 is -30. And now I need to add this up. So I have 0. The very last term here is your remainder. And we don't have a remainder here. We were dividing a cubic function by a linear binomial. And so this is going to result in our quotient being knocked down or reduced by 1 degree. In our class, I am not going to have you guys ever divide by a quadratic or anything like that, not for these types of problems. So you can just remember that we're going to knock this down by 1 degree for our class. But anyhow, so this x cubed is being knocked down to squared. So each of these terms here in our result, they are our new coefficients. So we're going to have 1 x squared. We're going to have -9 x to the first power. We're going to have -3. And we have no remainder, so I don't need to put anything for my remainder. So here's my answer. Now remember, it's technically called a quotient. And you can look at the other problem that we did to see, we did have the exact same answer. Well, there, if it'll load, there it goes. So exact same answer. This is long division. This is synthetic division. I do have to test you guys on both and teach you guys both, so here we are. So let's go ahead and do the other problem where we're going to end up having a remainder. I already wrote the problem down earlier to try to save time. So this problem, I have open parentheses, -15p squared plus 43p plus 37 plus p cubed, close parentheses, divided by -5 plus p. You've got to put your terms in order so that way your exponents are in descending order, your degrees. This dividend has a power or a degree of 3. That's the highest exponent we see, so I need to write that one out first. So here's p cubed. Next, I need to look for my quadratic term, so that is the -15p squared. My linear term is what's next, so plus 43p to the first. And after that, it's just a constant, so plus 37. I'm going to put all of that inside of parentheses. That is being divided by the divisor. It's out of order, so I'm going to put the p first, and then I could say plus -5, but I'm just going to put -5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set up for synthetic division. So it's like a flipped long division bar. I make sure that I have 2 rows of space to keep my stuff nice and neat. I need to copy down the coefficients of each term in my dividend in order. So I've got 1p cubed, so a 1's going to go here first. -15p squared, so I'm going to write down -15. Plus 43p to the first, so I'm going to have a positive 43 plus 37. So positive 37. Next, I need to set my divisor equal to 0 and solve for my variable p. So p minus 5 equals 0. To isolate p here, it's just a one-step equation. You just add 5 to both sides of the equation. I'm not going to look for this in your work. You can show it to yourself if you need to. Sometimes, though, you have multi-steps here, because we could have had something like 3p minus 5. So then right here, I would have 3p equals 5, and I would need to divide by 3, and I'd have a fraction. That can happen. So just be aware of that. Because I know sometimes kids, they just want to flip the sign. But anyhow, this value of p I'm going to place it over here to the left of my synthetic division bracket. And then I'm going to go ahead and go through that algorithm. I'm going to drop down that first term, that coefficient. So it's 1. And now I'm going to hop through those hoops. I'm going to multiply 5 times 1, and that product is going to go up here. So there that is. I'm going to take the sum of these two. Negative 15 plus 5 is negative 10. And now I need to repeat that process of multiplying 5 by this value down here, negative 10. So 5 times negative 10 is negative 50. I'm going to take the sum of these two. It's negative 7. And again, repeat that process. 5 times negative 7, that is negative 35. I'm going to take the sum of these two, and I end up with 2. And now this very last value here, that is my remainder. I do recommend that you guys circle the remainder and talk about it, so that way you don't go and forget that it exists. Now we started off with a cubic dividend. The thing that was being divided had a degree of 3. It's being divided by a divisor with a power of 1. So this degree is going to go down by 1. I'm going to have 1, and my variable is what, p? So 1p squared. And then once you have that first term written down, it's really easy just to kind of follow that staircase pattern for your degrees. So we're going to have minus 10p to the first minus our constant 7, and then we have that remainder. So plus our remainder divided by the divisor, and the divisor was p minus 5. I really want to be clear, if our remainder was a negative number, then you wouldn't say plus this negative, you would just put a minus sign right here instead of a plus sign. I'm going to go ahead and label this as my answer. Now next week you guys are going to have some choice. Tomorrow though I'm gonna have to see you do it both ways. You can compare the results. I'm trying to put that up on the board. You know, the difference between the two processes. You know, our state, they want you guys to see the two different strategies, and I need to make sure that you can write answers with remainders and without remainders the right way in both circumstances. So this is something that if you were to ever change your mind and decide, you know, college is something you're interested in, that you see this again in college. So let me see, I'm gonna stop this.